Hey, this is Steve Bloom, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 95 of the Cinema Geeks. I am one of your Cinema Geeks, Optimus Solo. Joining me for episode 95 is Movie Revolt Dan. Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad. And Hard Candy Mandy, the one and only. Hello.
Hello, one and only. Yes.
I guess. And Fridley Sent. Hello, sir.
Hi.
We're all here. So we're bringing you episode 95, which is allowing us to take another trip into our video game series of movie reviews. And if you have not been keeping up with that so far, we have done an episode on Super Mario Brothers, the film, as well as Double Dragon. And now we're moving on to our third of our video game series films, which is, of course, Street Fighter, the 1994 live-action film. For those of you that aren't familiar with that title, it might be a good idea to go watch it first and then come back and listen to the rest of the podcast. But it came out in 1994, directed by Steven D'Souza, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, Raul Julia, and a few others like Kylie Minogue, etc., etc. Obviously, this is based on the Street Fighter game franchise. Specifically, it says that it's based on the second installment of that franchise. But before we get into the actual film and some details about that, what we usually like to do is start off by giving a real quick background on our history with whatever video game franchise it is that the film is based off of. So, Dan, how knowledgeable are you in the Street Fighter world, and did you ever play Street Fighter growing up?
I did play Street Fighter 2 a great deal growing up. I had my classic Sega Genesis, and we played this a lot. I don't know how knowledgeable I am of the stories. Like, going back, and some of this was ringing a lot of bells with different characters, and I forgot a lot of it. But similar to Double Dragon, I think there was a cartoon. I didn't watch it as much as I watched the Double Dragon one, but I do remember one existing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I played a lot of the sequels, too, though I feel like those haven't stuck with me nearly as much, and I think there's like 1,000 of them, so it's hard to keep them on track. But, yeah, I played it a lot. You know, the Street Fighter 2, I think that came out right when I was getting into video games hardcore as a kid. So, yeah, it was, it was one of probably the games I played the most of back in the day.
Nice. As for myself, I did play some Street Fighter growing up. I don't remember which version of it was. I'm assuming it was Street Fighter 2, since that was the one that obviously became the super popular one, more so than the original one. But growing up, I was never big on the fighting games. But if I was playing one, it actually was usually Mortal Kombat. So I was more of a Mortal Kombat kid than a Street Fighter kid, but neither one was one that I played like a ton of. But I played it enough to know the characters so that when we were watching the film, etc., that certain characters were familiar to me. I knew the names, etc. I knew what they were supposed to look like from the game. So somewhat at least aware of the world, but I wouldn't say I'm like super knowledgeable of it. Amanda, how much Street Fighter did you play as a kid?
I actually played quite a bit of Street Fighter, but I was still super young when this came out, so this was more of being at my older cousin's house all the time, and they had it, and then I would just kind of do like the one move over and over again, and then they get really mad when I beat them.
Stop punching me in the face!
Yeah. I would always just do with the stretchy arms, because I would just like go as far the way as possible. And
yeah. But I mean, I even own some now, like some of the older ones for like Xbox and stuff. So I love the franchise. I've always had fun with fighting games. It's kind of my thing. It's my go-to for video games. So I've always enjoyed it. And I've seen this movie a couple times. I own the Legend of Chun-Li, the newer Street Fighter movie. I dig the franchise, a lot of fun. I will play this over and over again, and I don't know which one I like better, Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. I think I have a special place for both in my heart, so that's where they match up for the two.
Matt, what about you?
I think I'm with Kevin in having played a lot more Mortal Kombat than Street Fighter. I know I owned Mortal Kombat games, and I don't think I owned any Street Fighter games when I was young. but I do remember renting them from movie rental places back in the day, and I remember one time declaring that I'd beaten Street Fighter the first day I'd rented it, but I probably did like a 6-man tournament and won that, and was, 8 and didn't realize there's a difference. So, I've got a good amount of time with it.
Okay. Well, to give everybody a little bit more background information on the actual film, I don't remember if I did this with Double Dragon. I know I did it with Super Mario Brothers, but looking at the budget and the box office numbers real quick to kind of set the stage, as a film, the budget on this film was $35 million budget, and the domestic gross for it was actually just under that at $33 million. So budget of 35, domestic gross of 33. Obviously, if you take international dollars and add all that in, it did make a profit, but domestically just under its budget. Give you a little bit of information too as far as where it stacks up with the rest of the video game films. Like we had mentioned with Super Mario Brothers, and if I didn't mention it, I'll do it now for Double Dragon. Super Mario Brothers is listed as the 21st highest grossing video game film, and with 20 million, and Double Dragon was listed as the 32nd. Actually, out of all the video game films we're going to talk about, Double Dragon is the second worst as far as the box office goes, with only making $2 million in the domestic box office. Street Fighter obviously is better than those two. It's ranking in at number 17, so $33 million is good enough for 17th place on the video game echelon, which is not something to brag about, obviously, Dan.
No, well, it's surprising $2 million for Double Dragon. That just feels bad. I feel like just the people that were in it paid to see it, and that's about it. So
yeah, that's not good. And I also found one other ranking that it ranks really high on. Apparently, Street Fighter, they have a chart on Box Office Mojo for the biggest ever Friday to Saturday drops during a wide release opening weekend. They have charts for everything. Street Fighter ranks number 3 all time biggest Friday to Saturday drops during opening weekend. So it dropped 55% from Friday to Saturday. The only two films that have been worse than that, surprisingly actually, number 2 ranked is Magic Mike XXL, which dropped 60% from Friday to Saturday. And then the number 1 spot goes to The Ringer, which dropped 72%. So Street Fighter, number 3 all-time, biggest drop from Friday to Saturday.
It's a random grouping of movies and a random stat, so there you go.
Yeah, I just found it weird because they have all these different rankings, and usually, nothing's in the top. When we're talking about video game films, nothing's going to be in the top 10 of anything. And I was like, what is this ranking number 3 at? Apparently that. And then just to real quick go over the Rotten Tomatoes numbers, we started with Super Mario Brothers, which was a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. Double Dragon dropped us down to 8%. Street Fighter is going to go in between at 12%. So, Dan, are you looking forward to talking about this one?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. After Double Dragon, I'm looking, it's nowhere but up, I would assume.
All right. So how we've done this in the past is we've quickly looked at how the film translates the video game, and then how the film works on its own outside of whether or not it's a good representation of the game. Let's start with Amanda this time. With Street Fighter, how well do you think the film illustrates what you remember from the game and playing the game?
Man, that's a hard one. I don't think that there was enough street fighting. I don't think there was anything as big of a hole as like no jumping in Mario Brothers. I mean, there was still some fighting and some sweet moves going on in here. But I would have liked a little bit more actual like punching in the face and stuff. There was some pretty cool scenes, but I would have liked more matchups. As far as like character versus character, I thought that would have been a little cooler. I think that some of the characters, looked pretty spot on, and I think that their names all matched. I'll say that. I think that as far as like story goes, I don't really know what the story is in Street Fighter, so to have a movie based on it and to try to match up whether it lived up to that story or not, I'm not the one to ask on that one. But
Well, Matt, you usually are our story guy and our game manual guru. Now, I know, like you said off air, that there's about 3,000 versions of these games available. Were you able to come up with any consensus as to what the actual story that the Street Fighter world is based on when it comes to video games?
So, for Street Fighter II Turbo Hyper Fighting from 1993, which is the nearest to the movie come out, right? All I've got is this blurb in the manual that says, 12 fighters from across the globe have come together to face one another to see which of them has the strength, skill, and courage to be the crowned champion. Each fighter has mastered different skills and special moves, but it'll take more than brute strength to defeat the others and earn the title of Grand Master. So it's supposed to be a massive brawl tournament.
So nothing about an all-out war.
And there's definitely no world domination plot. But again, if all it was just a 12-man bracket system, it'd be a pretty boring movie.
So how well do you feel like that they did as far as the characters go and representing them on the screen? I mean, Amanda mentioned they got the names right. Did you feel like they got the looks of them right and the attitude or persona that the characters are seen to embody in the game?
Honestly, they did a really good job with it. I listened to, I don't know if anyone out there knows the Movie Boys, Jim Sterling and Conrad Zimmerman. They do a podcast every other week that's just this. They just do a random video game movie and talk about it. And Street Fighter's the only one that they've done that we've done somehow, because we're doing from the beginning and they're doing it at random smattering.
Gotcha.
And they talked about how it seems almost like they had the booklet, they got everyone's name and everyone's look, and they shot the final image of the movie where everyone's in their costumes all posing, and then worked back from there. Where it's like, okay, we need to explain how they all got into their various costumes and how they all got in the same area together, and you know, and that's what they did. Which it almost feels like that, just kind of how the movie rolls. But honestly, if you look at the manual, it's almost less multicultural. The movie is almost less multicultural than the game, which I know is a normal common thing. But that movie is very diverse with, you know, this guy's American, this guy's Japanese, this guy's Chinese, this guy's Russian. Like, E. Honda's supposed to be Japanese, but they made him Hawaiian. And Blanca's supposed to be Brazilian, and he's kind of white. But other than that, they pretty much got it right. Like, Zangief being Russian, Dalsim being Indian. They did a really good job, actually, setting down the characters. Ryu, they got his name wrong. They called him Ryu the whole movie, which is a little weird.
Well, some people did.
Oh, is that?
I always called him Ryu.
Some people called him Ryu and some people called him Ryu, and it sent me on a scavenger hunt through the internet to try to find out what I was supposed to call this guy, because I'm like, I've heard two different pronunciations in the same movie, and that usually bugs me. And it seemed like even the internet couldn't decide what his name, but most of them were, what, like you said, Matt, with the Ryu being the right name, which I've always called him Ryu, so I'm wrong too.
I even watched this more recent movie. It's like this Ken and Ryu backstory, live action film.
That was awful, by the way.
It was so awful. But I sat through the whole thing. I don't know how.
If anybody wants to check that out, we'll have to get to what the title of that was, because that was something to behold. I'm sorry, Matt, continue, though, with what you were saying.
But, I mean, they had to add an overarching story so it wasn't just street fighting. I do wish there was more street fighting and less guns, just because there's very little guns. Like, maybe, you know, at the beginning, have Guile get into a fight with another guy. Like, maybe have him fight Blanca at the beginning on a base, so that we get the feeling, and then, like, when Guile wins, helps Blanca up, we see that they're, you know, connecting, they're friends, they're buddies, but they also really like to fight. Like, just something to get a little more fighting, and also, I don't know, to give that feel that they're friends.
Right.
But
They said they're like, oh, we were friends back on this army base before.
Yeah.
You were kidnapped, but you don't know that.
Yeah, they do a lot of telling and not a lot of showing, but again, they had to add a story, they had to have their certain amounts of action beats and comedy beats and whatnot, and so, like, it's, you know, it's not a perfect translation, but it's probably the best game-to-movie translation we've had, and it probably will be the top 3 when we're done, which is sad.
I mean, we had
Don't depress me like that.
We had Van Damme. He couldn't have kicked some more people in the face instead of just.
That was we got something called Street Fighter. We have Jean-Claude Van Damme in it, and I swear, I wrote down 3 different times in my notes throughout probably the first 45 minutes, when are they going to actually have any type of street fighting going on in this film? Because I agree with you guys, there needed to be more street fighting. Dan, we haven't let you chime in yet, but what is your take on how well it represents the game that you remember playing as a child?
It's weird. In some ways, it represents it in a lot of ways. It's like superficial representation in a way. Yeah, they got some of the looks down, like the costumes on certain occasions. The moves, even some of the backgrounds, I noticed that they try to model them after the game. The story itself, like Matt was mentioning, you're gonna have to figure something out, unless you did Bloodsport. I mean, you do have Jean-Claude Van Damme, so maybe you could just recycle that just with Street Fighter characters. But it does feel like a script that they had, and they're like, I had no idea what to do with this. You know what? Let's just make some of these Street Fighter characters and call it a day. And somehow get it figured out, but they had some of the moves that they would do. They would a lot of the look. So I mean, I do feel like they put an effort out there for sure, but at times it felt shoehorned in, of course. So like Matt mentioned, I feel like it's probably the best representation. The characters look like the way they should. They somewhat acted like the way you would expect them to act. So.
There wasn't anything completely blatant like we've had in Double Dragon and Super Mario, where it's like, how did you get that wrong moment? There's nothing that was just so completely iconic about the game, the video game, that you just were watching the film and saying, well, these guys are supposed to be twin brothers like in Double Dragon, or some of the things that we mentioned in Super Mario Bros. I didn't feel like I had any moments like that. I don't know if you guys had anything that you just felt like, wait, they did this completely wrong.
Just the fact that the one guy in Street Fighter that's American with American tattoo, they got Jean-Claude Van Damme to play him.
Also, Chun-Li's outfit, I think they had her secondary outfit or something on.
They did mention, I was reading some trivia, and they did mention that a couple of them don't have, not all the outfits for all the characters are like the outfits from one single game. Most of them are from Street Fighter 2, but then a couple of the costumes are variations that you see in other games or something like that. So it seemed like there was a little variation when it came to the outfits.
In the manual for Street Fighter 2 Turbo, it actually shows her in the red costume as the main and the blue costume as a secondary, but iconically she is in the blue costume from then on, I believe.
Gotcha. Getting into at first I wanted to ask you, Amanda, too, because they both said that this was probably the best video game representation we've had so far. Do you agree that this one's done better than the other two as far as representing the game?
Yeah, I would say. I think that it holds more true to the original content than what we've seen so far.
All right, so I think we're all in consensus so far this is the best one as far as a video game representation, but that does not necessarily say anything about the film itself. Going into a little bit of background information before we get everybody's opinion on how the film holds up, some interesting tidbits here. I talked about how the budget was $35 million. I don't know if you guys saw this in any of your research or not, but apparently most of that is spent immediately by the first couple people that are cast in the film, because Jean-Claude Van Damme, I believe, got $8 million of that $35 million. So, also reading that apparently the director actually had his salary not paid to him so he could pay part of the cast. Huh. So, the director apparently did not make any money on this whatsoever. He had to supply it so they could have the rest of the cast be paid. And obviously Van Damme was the first person cast, and Raul Julia as Bison was the second. There's also another note about the casting that apparently there was a demand that they needed a Australian in the cast, and by the time this demand came out from the Australian Actors Guild, they had already cast everybody except for Cammy. So
that's why we got Kylie Minogue?
So he had one person left to cast, and he was told that he had to have an Australian in the cast, and that is why Kylie Minogue lands the part, who apparently he saw in some type of World's Most Beautiful People magazine or something like that.
Dude, she was a locomotion chick.
So
And also she did have some sweet moves, like some akin to Black Widow, old school, I'm gonna put my legs around your neck and flip you around moves. It was pretty legit.
Well, getting into that a little bit before everybody gives their thoughts, going into the physical training, they actually hired a world karate champion to train all these guys, and he was supposed to have all this time to get everybody trained on the moves and this, that, and the other. But apparently there was a whole bunch of complications. This is, for those that don't know, this is Raul Julia's final film role, and he was suffering from cancer at the time, and they had to completely reschedule and flip around the order that they were going to do things because of the bad condition that he was in, and it ended up where most of the cast got less than days and sometimes less than hours of training before the scenes were shot. So at times this karate champion only had like 1 or 2 hours to work with one of the cast members before a specific scene is actually shot.
That seems like something that was pretty pivotal that they should have put more time and effort
Well,
into.
there was a lot of restraints on them because of Capcom, who obviously was helping to finance the film, and they did a lot of things as far as when the film had to be done, this, that, and the other. So they were on a pretty tight schedule. And according to the director D'Souza, he wanted this film to be a cross between Star Wars, James Bond, and an actual war film.
And he succeeded.
Also, the MPAA apparently originally gave the first submitted cut of this film an R rating, which was apparently unacceptably high for Capcom, so they had to completely cut all kinds of different things, and they eventually got it down to a G rating, and then it was bumped up to PG-13 because of an added curse word or some type of language that was thrown in. So,
Dude, Guile
So when he
had
flips
some-
them off, is that it? Is that
I'm not sure. It just says an expletive that was added in post-production to get them from a G back up to a PG-13, which is what they were shooting for. So here's the thing. They wanted a PG-13 film. They shot a film that got classified as an R. They were so desperate to get it back to PG-13 that they went all the way and cut enough stuff to get it down to a G rating, and then had to add curse words to get it back to PG-13. That's just ridiculous. So, Dan, we'll start with you. When it comes to the actual film and how it stands up or holds up as a film, regardless of how well it represents the video game, what are the positives and negatives about Street Fighter?
I think Street Fighter is best enjoyed if you view it as a comedy. Like I think it ultimately is trying to be a comedy because there are a lot of comedic beats, like M. Bison. He has a lot of lines that it seems just to be purposely funny. He's being super hammy. Like the food court line is rather humorous, and there's like Zangief every time he talks. There's a lot of things in there where I'm like, it feels like it's more than just comedic bits, like it's trying to be funny more than it is. The plot itself makes no sense at all. It's just ludicrous what's there as things go, and I'm like, all right, whatever. Some of the acting is, you have Jean-Claude Van Damme, so his rousing speech aside, so.
I have a note on here. It says, all I wrote down was, never good to give Van Damme this many speeches. He is not an orator. Like, stop it.
We can all go home. Well, I'm not going home. I'm gonna get on my boat, and I'm going upriver, and I'm going to kick that son of a bitch Bison's ass so hard that the next Bison wannabe is gonna feel it. Now, who wants to go home? And who wants to go with me?
Who wants to come with me? I don't want to go with you, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
The war's canceled. Go home. The war's back on. Like, what is going on here?
So, I thought, it's like this is like noticed like one of the worst movies ever, and I don't know if it's just because we watched Double Dragon and Super Mario, it's that it's just better by comparison. But I thought maybe I felt there was more effort put behind this, and maybe it was just like I did find M. Bison intriguing and fun. I thought he was great. He had some awesome lines, like for me it was the Tuesday line. That was fun.
I'm sorry. I don't remember any of it.
You don't remember?
For you, the day Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday.
By no means is this a good movie, but I think there's enough there that I found it somewhat enjoyable in comparison, like I said.
Some of the language, like you're pointing out, was just I was not prepared for some of the lines that are dished out in this film. There was the other one where it's what was he? He said, "Have you lost your mind?" And I think Jean-Claude Van Damme said, "No, you've lost your balls." I was like, what? And then there was a very awkward line from, I believe it was Honda, who says, "Give me a hand," and then they say, "We've only been in jail a few hours."
Yeah, that.
No, he's like, wait a few months. It's a total prison jerk off.
I know, but that was like,
but it was pretty quick.
It was so awkward. I was just like...
There's also a line, there's something saying like you have to be crazy to try to go after M. Bison, and Jean-Claude Van Damme's like, well, he's driving me nuts. So I'm like, that's
jeez.
Like, just.
I must have missed that one. But yeah, some of the lines, like you said, with the Tuesday line, etc. I was just not prepared for the language coming out of everybody. Not that it's like appalling or anything like that. I just wasn't prepared because I'm like, oh, this is just a fun Street Fighter film.
Until Jean-Claude Van Damme calls somebody a dickhead and flips everybody off.
Amanda, how do you feel it worked as a movie, or what were its strengths and weaknesses?
Oh man, its strengths. It was put out in the 90s. I don't think that it would have done very well in times like now. I think that it was really cartoonish, and it definitely played up on the humor, but I like that. I think that's the only way that we would have been able to enjoy it. And I mean, it's Street Fighter. How serious can you really go in a plot with the Street Fighter? There's not much there to dig into, and I think that the characters being what they were really helped push it along and up the enjoyment factor for me. I've watched this a few times. I remember everything in the movie, so it's not like I was surprised by anything in this rewatch, but I'll definitely visit again. We'll say that.
All right. Matt, what do you think? How did it hold up as a film? You know, whatever angle you want to go, from the acting, from the writing, from the story, or whatever.
So when I listened to the spin-off Doctors version of this about a month ago, that's the Movie Boys, they kept saying throughout, because this is a comedy like Rush Hour. And I thought that was like a stab, like there's a funny moment or two, and they're like, we're just gonna keep pointing out that there was comedy in this movie that's about street fighting. So I went in knowing that there was going to be some level of comedy somewhere, but, you know, about 20 minutes in, it's very obvious that they're going campy, and they go hardcore campy. Like, this movie is right up there with the 1960s Batman movie. Like, it's just comedy for comedy's sake at many moments. But there are still some good lines, like was mentioned, that was just Tuesday for me. Like, that line is amazing. It's been quoted a million times since. I don't know. Like, it didn't bother me that it was comedy, and maybe because I had a little bit of an inkling going in, that might have not bothered me. But I always love camp. Like, camp is a thing that we don't get enough of anymore. We just get really straight referential parody and things like that. We don't get fun, campy movies, and this is one of those, and it was great. Like, even though that, like, I don't know, it allowed it to do things that it wouldn't be able to do if it did a straight action movie.
Were you surprised at the number of words that they were able to create out of the word bison?
Like Bisonopolis and Bison Dollars? I'm a little bothered that Bisonopolis, which I'm guessing is supposed to be the capital of the nation, is really just a building with a food court. But other than that, I love the Bison Dollars. Like, I'd love to have one. Like,
a Bison Grenade, Bison Dollars.
Oh, yeah, Bison Grenade, I don't remember that one. Oh, Bison Troopers were one.
No, it was the PA had an announcement, I guess, like a public service announcement for the citizens, and one of the things was what to do if a bison grenade is thrown at you. I'm like, what?
It was the radio guy, right? Because he was making fun of him.
Yeah.
If a bison trooper throws a bison grenade, pick it up and pull out the pin and throw it back. That was the line. Dude, that movie was great.
You know, that guy who's doing that was the real life guy who was from Good Morning Vietnam. Like, that was actually the dude who was based on in that film. Yeah, the guy doing all those PA announcements.
That was hilarious because it opens up with that "Good morning, Shadaloo" or whatever.
Yeah, Shadaloo.
That's the name of the town or of the country, right?
Yeah, that's the name of the place.
Well,
Welcome, Warlords of Shadaloo.
Yeah. According to Street Fighter II Turbo's manual, N. Bison is the leader of the international criminal organization Shadaloo. So they changed it from a criminal organization to a country.
Interesting.
But still managed to keep the name of the original thing.
Yeah, that doesn't... And they said that most of it's based off of, I guess, Bangkok. But yeah, it's supposed to be the fictitious Shadaloo city in the film. So that's interesting. A couple of notes that I had as far as some things I wanted to point out. I mean, it is camp, like you're saying, Matt, and you got to go in expecting what you get in a way, and Street Fighter camp humor, etc. And I'm glad that they didn't try to take themselves, I guess, too serious. I agree with Dan though. The writing and the story, it just seems like it's all over the place. Like, I don't know if 17 different people wrote like 10 minutes each, and then it just got thrown together, or how that worked. But there was definitely a lot of moments that kind of had you scratching your head when it came to putting the story together. I wasn't sure on a couple things, like how does Jean-Claude Van Damme recognize Charlie after he's been completely transformed? Like, I don't understand how there was enough to see that would somehow tip you off that was somebody that he knew.
Well, the eyes are the windows to the soul.
and we are talking about Jean-Claude Van Damme. So.
Well, also, why did he call out Charlie and get him in trouble to begin with? Like, come on.
A lot of things just didn't make sense. Like, at one point they're crawling around in like the exhaust ventilation, whatever you want to call it, piping and whatnot. And they're like, why did he pick at that moment to start asking the other guy about... or maybe it wasn't even when they're in the exhaust pipes, but there's like one point where they're trying to sneak around the enemy's location, and he's starting to ask him about his headband. Like, this is a bad time to make small talk about why this guy's wearing a headband. Like, you're supposed to be quiet right now.
Or why does Jean-Claude Van Damme stay in the morgue for like hours on end for no apparent reason? He's just like hanging out there. Like, yeah.
Just laying there, acting like he's still dead.
Wait,
they're not convinced that I'm dead yet.
I am a method actor. I am sticking with this to the end.
That whole scene doesn't need to happen because it's sort of like, oh hey, we got a tracking device on the criminals that snuck away. Oh, someone else did. We should go figure out who it is. Oh look, it's the American forces. Oh, okay, we don't need to go investigate their base. Let's just go and follow our tracker.
Yeah. And I did like that we learned that apparently you can create, like, the superhumans. All you need is bags of anabolic steroids and mutagen. And those are literally the labels on, like, the IV bags. Was one said mutagen and the other said anabolic steroids. 2
each. You need to have 2 IVs mutagen, 2 IV steroids.
Just like, what is going on here? Amanda, anything from your list there that you wanted to point out that we haven't talked about, like good things, bad things, things you noticed?
I think I have a little bit of a block when it comes to some actors. Like the guy that played Sagat, his voice and everything about his mannerisms in this just made me think of his character in Mystery Men as the Sphinx. I think he was the exact same, and it was kind of hilarious to me. I liked his character, but dude, Van Damme was just so sassy this whole time, and I just loved all his little quips and his little like poses that he would do, like the yeah poses. And I don't know, as far as all the other characters go, I was pretty happy with them, except for like Dalsim. Like, he was definitely a little different. And I don't think that dude was practicing yoga, and that's kind of his thing. So, a little thrown off by that, but overall, like, just like the tone and the look and the feel of it, I think that it made me feel like I was in a video game world, and I think that's what it should do for you.
The one thing that, also, you're talking about some of the characters there, the one thing that threw me off somewhat at the beginning is how fast they introduce, I think there's like 14 or 15 characters from the Street Fighter game that appear in this film, and I swear that they name drop all of them within like the first 15 minutes of the film. Like, they are all over the place, and they're coming at you with rapid fire. Like, I was a little thrown off at how quickly they did that, and it didn't really give me much time to digest who was who and what was going on. It was just like, here's this war, and every single person on the screen is going to be a character from Street Fighter, and we're just going to quickly introduce you to all of them. It seemed like it was rather rushed for me. Did you guys have any other opinions as far as characters that she said, like, Dalsim wasn't necessarily ideal for what she thought. Any other characters that you guys either thought they did really well or really bad when it came to the actual film?
I really liked Zangief. I thought, like, he had a lot of the best lines, like change the channel or the little like Godzilla fight at the end. I thought was one of the better scenes. So I did feel like they hit that character really well. And the actor, I think, had a good accent too. So I thought he was one of the better highlights.
It did also help provide us with, like we had mentioned before, I think Amanda was the one that mentioned it in her little opening statement, that she would have preferred more kind of versus matchups, more one-on-one showdowns between some of the fighters. I think we did get that a little bit with it was Zangief and E Honda, I believe, in that scene that had kind of a showdown, and obviously we get it with Jean-Claude Van Damme and Bison. Colonel Guile, I should say, and Bison. So I did appreciate that. I'm with her, though. I would have liked to see a few more of those like pairings go off and fight each other. But Matt, what was your other thoughts on the characters?
We also got Vega and Ryu fighting too early on. I'm just trying to think. Like Dalsim, they should have had a yoga. Just at the very beginning, had him practicing yoga when M. Bison goes to use him. Like just that would have been a nice nod. And Zangief, they did almost perfectly because like. Literally in the booklet it says he's good-natured, he has a great sense of humor, he loves to fight, but it also kind of lays down that kind of stupidity where it's like he's more willing to walk into a punch so long as he can grab his opponent and drive them into the pavement. So he's like, I don't know, they did a great job. Vega's supposed to be Spanish. I don't really get that feeling from him. Like he's supposed to be like a flower in the mouth kind of guy. They made him more Asian-y, but they got his pretty boy nature down. Like, I don't know, it's hard to complain about anything. Like, if you look throughout pretty much any booklet of the time, they got, like, every character in, except for, I don't remember saying Fei Long. But if there's one guy who's not that different than Ryu and Ken that they missed, and that's all they missed, like, they even got DJ, who I don't even remember. Yeah. I remember T-Hawk, I remember Cammy. They got, like, everyone in, and they're all really close, if not spot on. They did a really good job with the characters, even if they had to cram 12 characters into a movie and give none of them enough backstory except for the two main characters. They still managed to get them in and managed to make them okay.
The only interesting thing, like we said there, maybe you couldn't avoid this since you're trying to create a film out of all this, but not a lot of them necessarily are fighters, I guess, in a way. Like, you have a few that seem to have a background, but a lot of the other ones are just kind of just random characters or random professions that I guess are going to fight in this. So that was kind of a weird, for me, a little bit.
Well, Chun-Li was like an instant ninja at one point. Like, reporter turned instant ninja.
Yeah, no explanation.
When it comes down to the critical reception or how well the movie was received, obviously, like you can predict, it was not met with the highest praise by anybody. We already talked about its Rotten Tomatoes percent of 12%. Leonard Maltin said even Jean-Claude Van Damme fans can't rationalize this bomb. Time listed this film on their top 10 worst video game movies ever, which that seems like a ridiculous list to create in the first place.
That's the list of the 10 movie games that have come out yet.
Right. But a bunch of people did this. Like, Game Trailers ranked this film as the 8th worst video game film of all time. I'm like, the rankings of that mean nothing to me. Somehow, though, the film did receive 2 nominations at the Saturn Awards, Best Science Fiction Film and Best Supporting Actor for Raul Julia. So
I get the supporting actor, but science fiction film, really? Like,
it has an invisible jet boat.
True.
But yeah, so not great as far as the reception goes from that. As far as final thoughts and a score for Street Fighter, let's start back with Amanda. Anything you did not get to mention, final thoughts, and where would you score this one out of 10? And how does it stack up to Super Mario Bros. And Double Dragon?
Oh Lord, definitely better than what we've been hitting lately. Based on the fact that it got at least the characters right and made me feel like I was in some kind of video game realm, and it didn't punch you in the face with the franchise like what we saw in Double Dragon, where the video game was actually in the arcade in the background. We did see like a Capcom logo on like the barrel Chun-Li was in, but it wasn't like something that was so, in your face as the actual arcade machine in the background. I'm going to also give it points for the fact that I'm probably going to watch this again. I don't want to go too high, though. Man, I think I'm going to give it a 4.5. I don't know what I gave Double Dragon, but I'm going to give this a 4.5.
Are you saying this is better than Double Dragon and
Yes.
Super Mario Brothers?
Yes.
Okay, and you did mention the Capcom Barrel, which apparently is going to be a theme that we're just going to have to keep watching for every movie. Apparently it's going to have some type of random video game, like product image placement or whatever. So, 4.5 from Amanda. Matt, final thoughts, and what would you give Street Fighter?
Also, the controls for his mines, you know, those things that need a controller, it was a classic gamepad, which is another nod. Like, and it's one of those things where it's like, come on, you don't need a controller for the mines. But at the same time, it was such a fun, campy, hilarious scene that I was like, about 10 seconds in, I'm like, I actually like this. And to touch back on Chun-Li, her backstory is that she's been tracking the movements of international smuggling operation Shadow Lu and is trying to find the Grandmaster who was responsible for his father's death. Really, they should have had a scene where she met the two disgraced fighters who had quit fighting, and they're like, let's just take down this criminal organization. Like, because again, it's just like, to make it perfect to the game, they just needed to add about a 1-minute scene for every one character, and then it'd be perfect. And, you know, it's not a perfect movie, and there's some things that are just a little silly, like Van Damme's speech, but honestly, I enjoyed this movie from beginning to end, and I would watch it again if someone was like, hey, you want to watch Street Fighter? I'd be like, yeah. Not that I ever have time to watch any movies, but I would. And I think this might be one of the best movies we're going to watch in this whole thing, sad to say it, this early on. Because even if it's not a perfect representation of the game, but it's probably one of the best we're ever going to get, it is also a fun movie to watch, because sometimes it's hard to do both. Honestly, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Like, this is better than some movies I've seen in theaters in the last year or two.
All right, so we got one person down in the 4.5 range, another up in the 7 range. Dan, who are you siding with more on this one?
I guess I'm a little bit in the middle. I think, like Matt mentioned, if you view this as like a campy 1960s-esque Batman movie that is, you know, on the nose, is not trying to be serious, I think it's much more enjoyable. I do think maybe people at the time thought it was trying to be serious, so I think I don't think it's as bad as some of the. Well, we've only done 2 so far, but I feel like we have worse ones coming up. I at least thought there were some humorous moments that were intended to be humorous or effective. Some of the characters I thought they did try. Like, I thought there was effort put behind here. Like, there was an affection for the source material, and they try to show it. Now, like, the plot and the writing, and there's a lot of things that are just like nonsensical and things that just don't make sense and what have you. It's, you know, it's got issues for sure, but I think, you know, overall I enjoyed my time more than I was, you know, shaking my head and wanting to stop watching it like I was with Double Dragon. So I would give it a 5 out of 10, which is, for this series, might be as high as I go. Who knows? We'll find out.
So a 4.5, a 5, and a 7 for you guys. I will agree with some of the stuff, Matt, that you were saying. Like, I would watch this again, but I would watch this again in a group.
Yeah.
Like, if I had a group of friends that wanted to put this on and, like, have some campy fun and make fun of it at the same time, or point stuff out and make a experience out of it, I think that would be something I would do. I don't know if I would watch this on my own, sitting alone in my living room. Like, that I don't know if I would be able to do again. But in a group, I think it's fun. If you go in knowing what you're getting into, I think it can be fun. And I agree with what Dan said. There's not as many, like, I need to walk out of the room moments like you had with Double Dragon. It's just not that level of bad. So it's interesting because it's taking on, you know, I guess somewhat of a similar type of video game. Obviously, Street Fighter, you have a lot more versus an actual straight fighting, but a better representation for me of the game and a slightly better film overall. If this is as good as we're getting from, like, what a couple of you are saying, like, I am scared to go down the rest of this path. But I'm hoping that there's a couple others that'll at least be better than this. So here's hoping to that. But I will agree with Dan on this one. I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 10. I'm not willing to go above 5, but I am willing to meet it right in that halfway point. 5 out of 10 for me. So you'll have to let us know who you agree with more and where you would fall on Street Fighter, and if you agree, like apparently all of us did, that it is the best video game film we have seen so far, regardless of how many top list it's on for worst video game films, which is just ridiculous. But next week, guys, we're going only 1 year into the future. So we started with Super Mario Brothers in 1993. 1994 gave us both Double Dragon and Street Fighter. And now we move to 1995 next week, when we will be covering a very similar that we already mentioned, which would be Mortal Kombat. So, Amanda, excitement level for Mortal Kombat next time. Not next week, but next time we do the video game series.
Dude, I am on 11. I love Mortal Kombat. Super fan of the series. Played every possible Mortal Kombat game. And the films I could watch over and over and over again. The music I could listen to on a CD in my car while I'm driving around, and I have. I was looking forward to it, definitely.
So apparently, Amanda looking forward to Mortal Kombat is what I got out of that. Matt, what's your excitement level to move from Street Fighter to Mortal Kombat?
I believe I've mentioned this earlier. Mortal Kombat is probably the only video game movie that's going to top Street Fighter to be the closest, most accurate, and also a decent enough movie. That said, Christopher Lambert should never play a hero character. He's like the evilest looking and sounding guy I've ever seen, and I don't know why he keeps getting cast as a hero. So it's going to be weird with him as Raiden, but other than that, it's probably going to be an actual decent experience, if I remember correctly from seeing it 20 years ago.
Dan, are you as excited as these two to venture into the Mortal Kombat realm?
Well, I did like it when I was a kid. Like, I remember liking it so much, I went and saw Annihilation in theaters, and it's given me nightmares ever since. So, yeah, I'm curious to go back and revisit it because it's been a while. I remember thinking it was good, and I could be wrong. We'll see.
That never happens in the movie world when you think something was great as your childhood, and then it becomes completely ruined. I've actually seen multiple of the spin-off films and the different like little, I don't know what you want to call them, little short type
Mortal Kombat Legacy?
backstories that they've done with Mortal Kombat Legacy. I've seen a lot of those, but it's been a long time, I think, since I've seen the actual Mortal Kombat film. So I'm looking forward, like you, Dan, to remember if it's exactly how I remember it or if it's slightly different now, watching it through our lens as we go through this series. So
I'm going to wear my Mortal Kombat t-shirt for like 48 hours straight while we watch this. I'm going to sleep in it and everything.
All right, and until we do the podcast on
that
as well. All right, so looking forward to going to Mortal Kombat next, our fourth in the video game series. Again, let us know your thoughts on Street Fighter, if we did it justice, or if you feel like we should have been higher or lower on it. Other than that, we just always want to get you guys going to watch or listen to the regular episodes as well. We just did, obviously, a review on Captain America Civil War. We'll have a review of X-Men Apocalypse coming up, and then we'll, of course, continue our Miyazaki spotlight as we move from the Castle of Cagliostro to the second film in his filmography. So a lot of stuff coming from us that we want you guys to chime in and keep up with. So as far as our individual Twitter accounts, if you want to keep up to us and engage with us on a daily basis, Amanda, what is your Twitter handle if they want to talk to you?
Heart Candy Mandy, eyes, no wise.
And Dan, what about yours?
I am at Movie Revolt.
Dan, why don't you also, we don't get to do it a lot because I just assume that everybody listens to it, but maybe they don't. Why don't you quickly also tell people about your other show that you do and what kind of stuff you cover and what the title is and how they can find that?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. It's Talking in Circles. It's also on Geekcast Radio. We cover similar things, mostly geek general topics. The next episode coming out, we're actually playing the classic Desert Island game, so where we try to determine what movie, TV, book, food, and famous person we'd bring on a desert island if we got stuck there. So kind of just random conversations like that.
They do a lot of games over there, and it's a lot of fun to listen to. Occasionally talk about food as well, so they can make you hungry at the same time. But I would definitely encourage anybody that listens to us to check Talking in Circles out as well, because they do a lot of fun stuff. Matt, if someone wants to talk to you on Twitter, how do they do that?
They could do it at Fridley Scent. And if you think I rated this movie too high, come and fight me, bro.
On the streets.
Street Fighter.
But and my Twitter is at Optimus Solo. If you want to tweet to us in general as the show, you can at Cinema Geekcast. And then obviously, like we said, go to geekcastradionetwork.com, find the episode post, make some comments there, and we will interact and reply to you. But other than that, that is it for us for this week. Be sure to check in next week for another chance to listen to the Cinema Geeks.
Hadouken! 竜巻旋風脚！はっ 波動拳竜巻旋風脚やっぐわ
スピニングバードキックやっえい飛行剣はははははやったあ
ーソニックブームはっふんうおーはっえいやふっどすかいいやははははうおヨガファイアヨガフレームおりゃはっははははいやおわふっほらほらふタイガータイガーアッパーカットタイガーニーふんふんふんふんふんおーふんふんふんふんおっ
Cannon drill spiral arrow thrust kick cannon spike hop yap
Hey, hit it! All right! Da 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 da! Ooh! Ha! Slash! Max out! No!